So here you are, one moment driving along the interstate, 70 miles per hour. Fat, dumb, and happy. Everything's just hunky-dory. So you get off on your exit. You're thinking, okay, no big deal. I'll just cruise over here. Make the cruise to the left. And you come right up in here, and as you go to turn, whoa! Nothing. Then, what do you do? So today, I have a cautionary and a confessionary tale to tell. So, within the last 7 years, I don't recall exactly when it was, there's my current job, I had some slop in my front end, and I believe the tire shop said I needed $1,350 worth of repairs, and I wasn't really feeling that. So I went in there, was playing around with my steering wheel, and I believe it was pretty close to the way it is right now. Lovely. Just when you think you've got a good story to go. Alright, try this again.
We got him here.
Oh, just come on. Anyway, so this is how much play I have on my steering. Do that, front end doesn't really change anything. Wheels don't turn. So I was poking around looking at that, and back in the old days, there's this thing called a rag joint that would wear out. It's like a little fiber coupling. It goes between your steering arm here, your steering shaft. They call this the intermediate shaft, or lower intermediate shaft even, which is attached to your steering wheel up there, and your steering box. Now, can I get this off of here? Fine. Demonstrate on the other part. Anyway, so there's a little coupling at the end of that, and a little coupling at the end of the top there. And I say, well, I'll just change the rag joint. Well, they don't make just the rag joints anymore. They make the intermediate shafts, which are $265 or something, as opposed to like $5 for, okay, $10 probably for a rag joint. What is a rag joint? This is the rag joint. So, just because I can, I ended up going to Napa to find a rag joint, because nobody sells it as a rag joint except for just a generic aftermarket part. The OEM part here is riveted together. I said no problem, I can unrivet it, and I cut the rivets out of there, put a new rag joint in there, bolted this sucker up. Actually had the bolts in the other direction, had lock washers on them and nuts. And lo and behold, didn't occur to me at the time, which is pretty dumb, because I'm an aircraft mechanic, I'm use lock nuts like these on everything. Well, I had lock washers and just regular plain nuts on the front side of this thing, and within the last 7 years, as I'm tubing along the interstate, as I tried to demonstrate there a little bit in the beginning here, those nuts came off, and I lost my steering completely. Very, very fortunately, I was off the interstate and making a nice little left-hand turn when the steering just went. 60 seconds earlier, I was going 70 miles along the interstate. Things could have gotten really, really bad really quick, because as you're turning along the corner, even, you lose your steering, control of your steering, and your front wheels straighten up, and you continue out over the outside of the curve, which is essentially what I did. Luckily enough, I was going slowly, and there was nobody to my right, and I was able to get off to the side and figure out what the heck was going on, bolt it back up, put jam nuts on the other side of it, and order a new part, because I got a little freaked out. Now my steering is a bit sloppy. I'm going to see about adjusting that out of it in the steering box, because now I'm a little antsy. I went to Rock Auto and got this manufactured by Layers. This is an American company. All the rest of them, even Napa, they all sell Dorman Chinese knockoff replacement parts. And if you saw my video on my 89 Corvette hood cables, you will know that I am not impressed with Dorman. So they happen to have this one for like 80 bucks. The other ones are 200. Auto parts stores are like 275. I have a feeling this was the last one they had. I think that's a closeout sale price or something. I don't know. Anyway, this is the factory setup from layers. Nice lock nuts on all 4 points. This one should never come apart, at least certainly not. Mine lasted 300,000 miles, so I don't think I'm going to have to worry about it. But just because I was able to change that does not mean I probably should have. So I'm going to recommend, you have problems and this thing gets loose or whatever, change this whole stinking shaft. And it's not a big deal, and we'll get into that here just shortly. Today's the day, as it would say. Okay, I'm finally getting around to changing this stinking intermediate shaft. So, did I show you this last time? I think I did. So this is the original equipment type, let's say. It's got a rag joint. This has got some fancy little cage thing in here too now. This is, I'm just going to replace it since I got this one for 75 bucks. There's a lot of info on the internet now. They have an upgraded shaft built by Borgensen, which is does not show up in like the regular auto parts catalogs, that uses a universal joint here. It takes this whole thing out of here. But they're still 270 bucks, $75. It's the last one, so I don't know if you can get one for that or not anymore. But we're going to put this one in. The bolt up at the end of that shaft is 15 millimeter. See that? You just have to get on the bolt head. Down here is an 11 millimeter, which I'm using a socket on. With this little bolt down there, which you probably can't see, but it's this one here, which happens to be bigger. So I'm going to break those loose. Try to get this thing pried out of the way, because this whole thing collapses. This collapses is the word. I'm going to stick this right here for a minute so I can show you. Stay put. So we'll just do it like this. Take this out. This is what it does. Telescopic. So now that I pulled that off of there. Alright. Let me loosen those up. Of course, then I put it on the wrong way. Ah. That comes out too, you see that? Sometimes monkey butts prevail. Alright. Anyway, there we go. I'll be back. Okay, here's the bolt at the front comes out. This is what the bolt at the back comes out looks like. That comes off. The bolt's got a little angle welded to it so it doesn't change, doesn't move. That way you can just loosen and tighten that nut. Little bolt we're not going to need anymore. Now what you got to do is basically pry this sucker out down here. I'm trying to use a brake spoon, but I'm going to need something a little bigger. I can't quite get it pushed all the way. I'm trying to pull it out up here, but it's like kind of stuck. So if I can get it out loose over here where I can pick this thing up and push it around a little bit. I gotta get that out a little more. And then work on that one, spray some stuff on it or something. Pull that right out of there. Alright, then I'm using my 1/2-inch drive ratchet to get in between that bolt, which may or may not be there on yours, and that front plate. Pop that sucker loose. back. Now, worst case scenario is I can just pull this whole front end of this shaft out of here and then work on just the back. But as you can see, the back just popped right out. So, let's look at the offending shaft there, shall we? Let's clear this situation up. Let me get this boot out of here. Yeah, great. Hold on a second. Okay, here we go. So I had cut the rivets, put the replacement rag joint in there, and what I had happen, these two nuts had come off, both these two bolts. This was one of my lock nuts. It's the wrong threads, so I cross-threaded it to use a safety. This one I had the matching one, lock nut up against that. I had to take that off there in order to get my bolt out. So this is what I was trying to avoid, replacing the whole thing just because of a rag joint. Now, new one matches that one, except for, like I said, it has a larger bolt here. It's like 14 millimeter or something. It's got the same basic setup, but it uses lock nuts like any sane person would do. This should just slide right back on. As long as you got everything straightened up, you got your steering wheel, check your steering wheel is the same position it was. This is going to be one big fat slot, so it should slide right up in there. When you got that in the slot, slide it down onto your steering shaft and your steering gearbox down there. It should line right up the way it was. If not, you've got these little fine threads on there, fine splines. You can tweak it just a little bit to straighten your steering out if you need be. So let's get that slid in there. It should be a piece of cake, theoretically. In the case of this layer, this is a 16 millimeter bolt, and if you can see in there, you have to take the bolt out because it goes just far enough to interfere with that shaft. Put it somewhere where I won't lose it because everything I'm putting up here is falling off. So once you put that bolt in there, I gotta see where it goes. It probably goes in one of these, this little reduced area there. We'll see. I think I'm gonna spray something on there just to lube it just a little bit for me to get it in there. Alright, stand corrected. It's even easier. This has a flat spot on it, so it can only go in one place. So you've got no adjustment on where your steering hooks up to this thing. That's all done in your front end. So, or when you put it up on the top, you slide this one down. Theoretically, everything's the same. Slightly to the right for whatever reason. Oh, pop that loose. Okay, so I'm going to make that a little bit sloppy. Just a little to the right, so I can turn, now I can turn the upper shaft and tweak it onto where it needs to go. Theoretically. It's going to take both hands. Alright, you may never run into this situation, but you can tell it's dark outside because I had to go get a radiator for leaning on that hose up here, broke the top of the radiator. Yeah, it's 13 years old, what can I say? Good thing it happened now. Anyway, so I couldn't get that pinch bolt in. See that pinch bolt down there? No matter what I tried, I ended up having to stick a screwdriver in between it and spread it out a little bit to get it to, so I could tap it on there. Managed to tap it on there, and I figured it may be an issue. So then I had to, I tried grabbing it with a pair of vice grips, the two parts of it, squeeze it together. I ended up doing, after, I can't tell you how long, ran the bolt in backwards. threaded it through the threaded portion to make sure the threads were good all the way through, ran all the way down, ran it back out. It was tough. And then I stuck it back in this way, turned the steering shafts to the right over there so that I could put a socket on it and push over this direction, because I could see when the pinch opens up, the top is going to be pointing towards the outer edge of the threaded part on the bottom, basically. So, or the top, yeah, so the outer part. So the bolt's heading in like this. So I had to get it so I could lean in, get the socket on there, and lean with a big extension so that I was putting all the weight on the outer edge and pushing as I went in. And lo and behold, after a long time, it just went on in. So that's in tight. That pinch bolt, I got to tighten up the one at the top, but the bottom one's in. Big deal about that, can't leave it in the other direction without it pinching. I mean, it's, if there's that bolt in there, I was even considering putting a smaller diameter bolt and just through bolting it, but it's got to be big enough that it goes in the groove of the shaft. There's threads down here, a groove, and then threads. This goes through the groove so that it doesn't allow the coupling to come off. As long as this thing's tight, it cannot pull off of there, and that's kind of important. So let's see if this will go on any better than the original one. The OEM plastic was a real pain in the butt. Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the butt too. So it's going to have to be pried on the bottom to get it over, and it fits on this bolt here. So that's going to take 2 hands. So I'll get that on. I'll get this one tightened up there, pull this down here, and then it's I'm putting a radiator. And I broke this little plastic line that goes to the fuel vent thingy here. I don't know if it'll run like that, or I'm just going to get a piece of fuel hose, but I'm not sure I have it here anymore. Clamp it on both sides of it. This one's giving me a problem. I end up having to, oh, this one I just moved over. I can put that one back, I think. You can see, good old Florida, it's February and mosquitoes are out like they think it's July. Anyway, hallelujah on that. Get this thing bolted up, putting the radiator back in actually won't be a big a deal, I don't think. Nothing, blood, sweat, and some more cussing won't fix. Alright, let me get both hands in there. Okay, let's just finalize this one. Covers back on it. Torque that sucker back up there. Alright, I just want to go over one last thing. You know, I talk about this repeatedly, that sometimes when you're working on something, it just doesn't, it's just not going. It's not going, it's not going, it's not going. You keep going. You got to get it done. You got to get it done. Eventually you get to a point it's like, well, I don't care how long it takes. I got to have this done, and I'm going to work on it until it's done. When you get to that point, it's kind of like weight off your shoulders, like, well, I no longer have to worry about, like, am I going to keep working on it or whatever. Once you make that decision, you're going to finish this thing, and the universe accepts that. It basically says, okay, take care of it, and whatever you are working on works out. And that's what happened here. I got to that point. I'm getting really frustrated because it's been a long time trying to get that bolt in there and monkeying around with it different ways and everything. Got out the light, put on some good music, grabbed me a beer. Wasn't 15 minutes later, I went ahead and did what I wanted to do, which was to get that thing leaned over on that outside. Sucker went right in. Hadn't been there in a while. I tell you, it's a pretty cool feeling. You go from like helplessness, like what am I going to do, what am I going to when I do, and then you basically just roll over into like, well, I'm going to fix it, that's what I'm going to do. Like I said, to me it just seems like once you get that through your head And once you accept it, whatever it is you're working on basically accepts it too and gives in and lets you win. It's kind of like a prerequisite for completing your task. As I got to finish this radiator install, and well, I'm doing it in the midnight here. Well, okay, it's not midnight, it's only like 6:30 because it's February, but it's dark out here. Oh, I just want to discuss that because that's pretty wild. I haven't been to that place in a while, and it feels good. 1 minute you're like helpless, and the next minute you just conquered the world. So, kind of a rush. All right, that's a wrap on that one. I'll check the steering. Maybe I'll do one last one on how it's steering, because I don't think it's going to be much different, but just in case. Either way, see you next time.